Right, if you're an athlete or hobbyist in any sport, you've found yourself in the right place, because today we're discussing all things plyometric. I'm your host Ben, I'm a strength and conditioning coach for combat sports athletes, and I'm currently recovering from a knee surgery, hence why you find me at my abode and not at the gym. Now in this video we're breaking down plyometrics, and it might be a bit rambly, so there's going to be a few parts. I'll just timestamp them now. We're going to go over just a quick intro, becoming powerful and what are plyos, how they work, different variations, and if you don't want to listen to any of that and just see the plyometric workout, you can just skip to this point right here, and I'm just going to walk you through a workout that you can do before your lifting sessions that's going to help you become more powerful. So when you normally think of strength and conditioning, the first thing that comes to mind is probably heavy lifting, like back squats, deadlifts, bench presses, rows, things like that, which are great, but there's a lot more to it than that. For example, this is the holy grail, the key to understanding how to become as athletic as possible. The force velocity curve. So we've got speed and force production. And you can plot exercises along this graph based on how much force they produce and how fast you would produce that force in that exercise. So for example, on one end of the graph here, we would have exercises that are maximum force, but very low velocity, so slow exercises, so heavy and slow. Think deadlifts, squats, your barbell movements, right? Bench presses, those are all very high force, very low velocity. Somewhere in the middle, we would have things where you're still moving heavy weights, right? It's not light, but you need to move the weight faster. Something like an Olympic lift, snatches, cleans. Those are still heavy weights, you're still using a barbell, but there's a velocity requirement to it, right? If you don't lift the weight fast enough, you're never gonna get it over your head in the snatch. So that's somewhere in the middle, and then on the complete other end of the spectrum, we would have very low force exercises, but as fast as possible. For example, plyometric variations. Again, not a huge amount of weight being used, but these are exercises that we're moving as fast as possible. So we plot them on that end of the force velocity curve. This graph helps us understand power. Power is force over time, also known as rate of force development. So how fast can you produce that force? So for example, plyometrics on that end won't make you strong, but they will make you fast. And we need that speed in order to become powerful. Now the magical thing about plyos is that they engage the stretch shortening cycle. That's where you stretch a muscle right before you contract it, and that's gonna make it produce more force and faster. So think when you land in a plyometric variation, you're gonna stretch your calf and your soleus, and then instantly from that position, they're gonna have to contract to produce force to get you back up. That being said, one very important thing to keep in mind with your plyometrics is ground contact time. You need a very short ground contact time in order to reap the benefits here. So as soon as you land in the plyometric, as soon as you land from the jump, you need to be spending as little time as possible in contact with the ground. So as quick as you can, jumping back off again. If you're too slow here and you're almost resting between your reps, or you're just not bouncy enough, not using the elasticity here, you won't get the benefits of the stretch shortening cycle, and therefore you're going to get way less rate of force or power gains here. So we really need to be enforcing that stretch shortening cycle by having as quick of a ground contact time as we can with these plyos. Now there are countless plyometric variations. We can't go over them all, and because of that, I'm a very big fan of just simple variations, just jumping up and down a simple space in the gym, corner off 10 meters, and you can get a lot done. You don't need to be doing lots of crazy variations that you see online as a beginner. For example, something like a box jump is still great because you're having to produce so much force to get up to the box, but you're missing half the benefit, which is the landing. It's important to note that with plyometrics, there's as much benefit in a high force landing as there is in the high velocity takeoff of the jump. So both aspects are just as important to each other. So jumping, the actual acceleration phase, but also landing with that high force and being able to produce force when you land to have a very short ground contact time and jump off again. So within our normal variations where we're not doing any box jumps and stuff like that, just easy stuff, we have light tier plyometrics, we have maximum intensity. Difference being that you need to be doing your light tier variations, which are just little jumps, a controlled amount of effort, not a lot, but you're just trying to here master the short ground contact time, having a full foot contact, so your whole foot landing on the floor, not just your toes and the ball of your foot. And you need to be able to expose yourself before you can move on to the maximum intensity variations where you really get all the benefits. So you need to get used to plyos with the light tiers, and that's why we're going to include them at the beginning of every workout. Maximum intensity variations like broad jumps, tuck jumps for height, single leg hops for height, All of those are really going to be where you get the most benefit, the most bang for your buck. But you can only do so much of those because they're very fatiguing. It's a lot of impact on the lower body, so you can only do so much in a workout. So we want to balance a bit the light tier and the maximum intensity. And then on top of that, we have the dark side, deep tier plyometrics. So dark, in fact, that they're not even technically plyometrics because the ground contact time is not short. You're actually trying to control your landing as much as possible. So they're not plyometrics. Technically, we have to call them deep tier jumps. But the reason these are really good is because they're going to help expose you to end ranges of motion and also producing a lot of force in those end ranges of motion, because as you land from a jump, you're having to produce a lot of force to not actually collapse in that position, but create a soft landing. So slightly different benefits there. You're not going to get much more powerful, but we still try to include them in our workouts because one, they're very good for you. Two, they're going to help expose you to create force in those end ranges of motion. And two, thus they're going to help you become a bit more mobile. So with that being said, we always try to include some deep tier jumps in our plyometric sessions too. Now, I know what you're thinking, this is a load of information and I didn't come here for a lecture. What do I actually do and how do I apply this to my training? So let's refer back to our force velocity curve that we spoke to at the beginning. You want to be doing things that are higher velocity at the beginning of your workout. So if you're going to be doing plyometrics, like I'm suggesting, I want you to do these at the start of your workout. You can do a little warm up and then get into them, but you don't want to be doing these after your heavy lifts. So you want to do plyometrics or things more in the middle of the curve like Olympic lift variations, and then you will do your heavy lifting after that. So right here, I'm going to give you a plyometric session that you can just copy and paste at the beginning of your next lifting session. 10 minutes is all I'm asking for. That's all it's going to take you to do. And like I said, we're going to start with our light tier variations. Pogos to start, feet together, little jumps, focusing on that ground contact time. And then we're going to go on to lateral pogos, 20 meters one way, 20 meters back. We also want to expose ourselves to some single leg work, especially here when we're still doing the light tier variations. So we're going to do some hops or some slalom hops, again, 20 meters per leg. And we're going to do 2 sets of each of those. So once you've done 1 set of each, we're going to come back and do it again. You don't need much rest for these, should be pretty easy, so you can just go back and forth between them. Then we're going to move on to the good stuff, where the real benefit is the maximum intensity jumps. We're going to start off with some standard maximum intensity pogos. So just a normal jump, but the goal is to build as much height as possible, okay? Whilst maintaining that short ground contact time. Really, you're trying to headbutt through the ceiling. You can do them with hurdles like here or without, but just do 2 sets of 10 meters. Then we're going to move on to, in what my opinion is, the ultimate plyometric. If I could only ever do one variation for the rest of my life, it would be this, and it's the single leg hop for height. The reason we get so much benefit here is you have your entire body weight landing on only one leg from a maximum intensity jump. So the amount of force being produced by that leg when you land and jumping onto the next rep is unmatched to anything else. So the gains you're going to get from that are crazy. 2 sets of 5 to 6 hops per side only, okay? So a lot of intensity, let's limit it to that. And then after this, we're going to hit those deep tier variations we were talking about. 2 sets of each, starting with 40 meters of a squat jump. Trying to land as softly as possible. Imagine you're catching a baby. And then we'll move into 2 sets of a split squat variation. This can be anything like a normal split squat jump, a split exchange, even a lateral split exchange. And we're going to do 2 sets of 20 meters per leg or side. And the last variation we're going to hit in this plyo workout is a deep tier hop. Okay, so we're jumping on one leg. You're not even jumping very high, but the whole point of this is, again, with these deep tier variations, to land softly and as deep as you can. Okay, doing this on one leg in a single leg hop is very, very difficult. Okay, so again, we're only going to do 2 sets, 5 to 10 hops per leg. Okay, you might even try this and fail, but you should be able to do all of that in 10 minutes. And then you can start your normal lifting workout. Now, in between the light tiers, you don't need any rest. For the maximum intensity, you're probably going to want to take 1 minute to 90 seconds between sets. And for those deep tiers, a minute is enough. Your heart rate might raise a little bit, but you're supposed to be an athlete, or you want to be one, so you should be able to deal with it. And at the end of the day, you can say you're using this as a warm-up for your lifting. So we don't need to be resting 5 minutes here like we're powerlifters. Now, you can just bolt that onto your normal lifting session. But if you're looking for a program that encompasses everything, plyometrics like these, exactly what to do with your lifts, what lifts to do on each day, how many sets, how many reps, even reference videos, what to do with cardio. If you want everything, all of that together in one place, you're going to find that on the Matt Strong program. And that's even going to include lots of optional mobility work. So that's pretty much everything you would ever need as an athlete on one program. And that's for less than £1 a day if you use my code BEN20 at checkout. So check that out. Try it for a month. It's well worth the money, okay? You don't need to be watching loads of videos like this trying to figure out what to do. Just get the program. Thank you for watching, and I hope you get jumping.